Hello again, my name is Stephen J. Childs of virtualvoicelessons.net, and I would like to welcome you to our Introduction to English Phonetics. Today we're going to briefly go over 3 out of the 14 vowel sounds that we use in English and spend some time learning how to detect them in a word, how to shape them properly, and how to maintain our tone while sustaining them. You can download our English vowel chart to review all the English vowels in our system. You know, singing is all about vowels. Without them, there is no singing. If we are in the midst of singing and sound is coming out of our mouths, then rest assured, it is a vowel sound. Most consonants, for instance, cannot even be held for a few seconds. Imagine trying to sing a P, for instance, or a K, and the consonants that can be held sound terrible when we do hold them, such as R's, your. This is why holding consonants cannot be regarded as true singing. You know, there have been a few students over the years that I have been asked from them why I do not consider certain consonants to be singing, such as M's, when many singers do hold them in songs. Well, I remind them that holding M's is not considered singing by anyone, simply by the fact that it has been given an entirely different name altogether. It's called humming. Now, vowels are nothing more than shaped air, right? And it is these shapes that we establish within our country as well as other English-speaking nations to be the sounds of our language. There are other countries with more or less vowels than we have in the US, yet a few of our vowels are found in other languages as well, which demonstrates the natural tendencies towards these certain vowels, such as A and E. But because there are also vast differences in vowel sound production from nation to nation, it has always been foolish to me that many voice trainers train Italian or German vowels to their non-operatic singers. And I must say that no matter how upset some voice teachers get with me on my opinions on their voice training, I will forever state that there is simply no excuse for training Italian and German vowels to their English singing students. Here at virtualvoicelessons.net, we hold on to a 14 vowel sound, 20 consonant English phonetic system. Although there are other systems out there that lay out additional vowels and consonants, such as the International Phonetic Alphabet, we feel that this system is simpler and works best all around for singing. These systems incorporate vowel modifications due to regional changes and are more geared towards speech rather than singing. Now, the symbols that we use seem to be the most common and are easily recognizable by most people. The IPA uses symbols that are not common to us and therefore are more difficult to grasp a hold of. But the importance of having symbols to represent these sounds is paramount issue because it enables our brains to actually see these sounds. My mind knows not only what oo sounds like, for instance, but it also knows what oo looks like. It puts a face on the vowel, which then allows us to associate other important features along with the face, such as mouth openings and so on. Now, just to mention, there are some consonants, for instance, that we have in English that are not found at all in our alphabet, such as the consonant zh. So we will use the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols to categorize these sounds, but we will use our common spellings to categorize all the other vowel sounds. One major skill that we must acquire while taking voice training is the ability to recognize vowels within a word and shape them correctly. In other words, we must know what to sing when we sing. Let me repeat that. We must know what to sing when we sing. If we are guessing at the vowel that we are ready to sing, then we are leaving our vocal performance up to chance. And chances are, we will never then be consistent in our singing. Also, so much of what style is has to do with the breaking of rules within phonetics, especially the area of vowels. If I know a certain word contains a certain vowel sound, and I know it's shaped a certain way, then I can break that rule on purpose to make a consistently weird sounding style. Understanding vowel sounds also aids us in rhyming if we are composing our own lyrics, and helps us to know how to develop an accent for a role that we may perform in an upcoming musical theater piece, and so on. So the bottom line is, the understanding of vowels is essential to developing our singing voices. So let's begin. The first vowel sound that we will take a look at is ah, and it is without a doubt the purest of all the vocal utterances. Now, what I mean by purest is that ah has no shape. It is an unaltered sound and may have been the first sound that you ever made in your life. Even when we yawn, we are usually making the long ah sound. Ah, ah. What makes it so pure as well is that it only has one projection point. Now, let me take a minute to explain that. As you know, we are always striving to maintain voice placement, which in contemporary voice means it's in the back of the hard palate. That may be considered to be the sound's initial starting point. But for every vowel sound besides ah, there's also an ending point, which varies from vowel to vowel and gives the vowel its certain characteristic. E, for instance, starts in the back of the hard palate and ends up behind the front teeth. But again, what separates ah from all the rest of the vowels and vowel sounds is that it does not have a secondary projection point. Ah is found in the following words: the word stop, the word monster, the word hospital, octave, father, solid, and so on. When we have an R attached to the ah, there is a concealment that happens. Words like star and large, barnyard, and so on are sometimes hard to distinguish what vowel they're holding because the R is hiding it. Now, let's look at ah's mouth shape. Ah simply has a full mouth opening and is considered to be one of the brightest of all the vowel sounds. Some of the problems we face with ah is accidental closing of the mouth and also singing other vowels in place of ah, such as aw and ah. Ah is very similar to ah. As far as closing the mouth, we must remember that there are no alarms that go off when we start to close our mouth. The difference in feel between the mouth being this open and this open is hardly noticeable. So be mindful of your mouth. Keep ah fully open from the jaw at all times. Remember this: what makes ah sound like ah and not other vowel sounds such as or aw is the fact that ah has a greater mouth opening. The vowel E may be considered one of the hardest vowels to keep consistent and to sing without straining the throat and tongue. Yet it is one of the easiest vowels to sing with a piercing tone, which therefore means it is arguably the most powerful sounding vowel in English. E is in actuality the mirror opposite to the vowel sound ah, and because of this relation it is also considered to be a pure vowel. Ah has a full mouth opening, for instance, which is opposed to E, which has a mouth opening at least the width of a fingertip. In fact, E is the most closed vowel we have in English, which brings up an interesting point. If E is the most closed vowel when we sing, the most closed the mouth should ever be is the width of a fingertip, which is still pretty open. Again, the most closed the mouth should ever be is this. Another example of how E is the mirror opposite to Ah is the fact that this vowel does have a secondary projection point, which is behind the upper front teeth. When we sing E, the sound first hits the back of the hard palate and then rides along the roof of the mouth and ends up behind the upper front teeth. When we execute E properly and with enough volume, we can actually feel the upper front teeth vibrate a little. Because of this vibration, E has a slight nasal resonance. This does not mean that E is sung nasal, however. If our initial projection point were to move forward, then the vowel would become nasal, as now the sound would be concentrated in the front rather than the back of the hard palate. So again, we are not to concentrate the sound forward into the nose. As long as we maintain voice placement by first aiming the voice onto the back of the hard palate, the E will not be nasal sounding, although it will have nasal resonance. As far as detecting E in words, it's really easy to hear this vowel in most words, such as each, feed, believe, feeling, and so on. Even when there is an R or an L attached to it, it's still pretty easy to hear. Some of the challenges that we do face while singing E is closing the mouth, pressing the back of the tongue upwards, especially in high notes like this, E, and smiling as we sing this vowel, which causes the neck to tighten. There are, unfortunately, many voice teachers out there who teach their students to smile as they sing this vowel and even the vowel sound ah. The reason for this is that smiling is a quick fix to make our voices sound brighter and more clear. But this is a fake way to make the voice better. We do not want to rely on overshaping the mouth on any of the vowels. This grows out of control because the root problem was never fully addressed, which is learning how to control the tongue from wanting to flex and raise. It's like someone with a bad toothache taking aspirin to mask the pain, but never going to the dentist to take care of the initial problem. As you know, these problems do get worse and worse through time. So no smiling when we sing unless it's for performance reasons, not because we depend on it to make our voices sound better.